Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining. This is a new live stream for NIO earnings. I hope everything works out technically. I'm on a mobile setup. That's why I have not high definition for today, but I hope it will be good. I will keep going through the earnings reports as always. First, the report that we already got, and then later on a second stream as always for covering the management call actually. So yeah, maybe quickly let me know in the comment section if everything works on your side. If not, I'll try to improve. And in case that there will be interruptions, I'll try to get back as always. So let's see, 100 people more or less joined so far. Gonna start walking through the report in a second, which we got quite early today, actually. I thought it would just come around this time. So a little bit earlier, I had time to dig into it already. So that's great. It gives me a little bit more of preparation than usually. And now we've got almost an hour to the management call actually, right? So I'll try to keep this video within half an hour or 40 minutes. So it gives us some time to hop over to the management call together afterwards. But I'll take some Q&As maybe in this call, in this live stream as well. And if not, definitely in the management call, which might, as usual, go almost into the start of the trading, right? So it is what it is. You know the drill. And really appreciate everybody's joining again in this morning. If you're in the US or during lunchtime here in Europe or later at night, actually already in the afternoon in China, right? So really pleased with you guys joining again. And now let's make maybe the window larger here for this report. I guess by this time, most of you have seen it. I've seen it. And you also discussed that before, right? A little bit of the stock price reaction. But first of all, like Seeking Alpha, the headlines here, 30 cents loss, revenue 2.6 billion. Then, talking about the gross margins, which I have to talk more in depth about in my take here, also about my estimates versus market, and then highlighting the outlook here, deliveries between 87 and 91,000 for the current quarter, which we're in. So not too much here in the headlines. I can tell you that, in my Patreon community, yesterday I already shared my personal estimations. And I have been this time a little bit going out of the ballpark, a bit more optimistic there. Let me tell you up front, it hasn't been hit. So I've been way more optimistic for this quarter than what's the result here. But I would say that this report sort of seems to reflect the overall analyst expectations. But I'll tell you in a second why I think they might actually have shown a different improvement already, which they haven't. Because frankly, when I first read into the report, I thought it's not that great, to be honest. I thought it's actually quite a bit of a bummer in a couple of things, like the margins, which we need to talk about, and the net losses. So first, let's maybe quickly skim through this report, a couple of highlights there, and then go into my estimations and my expectations and my opinion, where I think we are with this report and going forward, and then head into the Q&A. So by now, 200 persons joining, amazing. By the way, if you're subscribed to the channel for more than 1 year, you can comment, as everybody who is here commenting in the comment section, and I'll be taking your questions. And other than that, everything else is usually Patreon only in the members chat, like my estimations yesterday, but also you get videos that I don't post on a public channel, as well as if you're becoming a YouTube member, that you can also do on the channel. Just become a member, you'll get the same videos that you will get in the Patreon section usually. So that's it for now. I think we can now jump into this report. The vehicle sales, I think, came in quite a bit lower than my personal estimations. I actually guided them down yesterday because I thought they would actually come in higher, but for the quarter, the sales, like the unit sales, but we knew, of course, they have been lower than my personal estimations. And so actually in my personal estimations for this quarter, I was estimating already lower than initially, but still it was much higher than what I expected here as this 2.2 billion in vehicle sales. So not pleased with that number, I can tell you, but more on that in a second. Then the vehicle margin, I think, is the biggest negative for me, only 10%. How can we explain that? Well, yeah, the second quarter was maybe still the quarter in the transition phase where we also had very low volumes on some of the volume models like the Onvos and such. And then also for the NIO brand, right, we had the transition phase between the platforms, Firefly only being launched, that sort of stuff, which may have hit the margins. But you know, I went in my estimations, which I'm going to talk a bit in a bit. I went a little bit more with a gradual increase that I'm seeing throughout the year or estimated throughout the year, and that clearly didn't happen. So not happy with that vehicle margin. The gross margin also not that great, and then the net loss with around 700 million. I personally had much lower estimations already, but I guess the market has been focused at around 600 to 700 million. So not a big surprise, actually. It's not a surprise, but I was going a little bit out here and looking for a surprise quarter, as we usually have. You know, usually the NIO quarters are really misses, right? They are missing on the revenues, they're missing on the profitability metrics and so on. And I was hoping, that they possibly have been sandbagging a little bit in the past, and it may now start showing also some more gradual improvements of what has been, worked on for a year already, like with cost reductions and that sort of thing. But seems we get that in full volume in the next couple of quarters, but more on that in a second. Now let's look if there are any interesting remarks here. So the deliveries of August, we knew that, great numbers, right? They're highlighting it again here as well. Then the L90, which is blowing away the customer expectations, I would say, and on top of that has generated this very recent investor excitement again, is highlighted here. And then the highlight of the NIO brand, the ES8, which is also now surprising, with something that I've talked about in my last video of, the second phase of NIO, Shinfei, this guy who's more pragmatic about, how NIO is approaching launches and the market in general. And of course, the ES8 is not his car or whatever. That's not what I want to say, but I want to say that we are hopefully seeing here a new evolving NIO in a sense that they have changed some of their management. I was talking about they're hopefully letting go some of the overhang, cutting some fat. And the ES8 is very promising of what the NIO brand will be looking like in the future as well, right? Because right now we know that the short seller narrative around the NIO brand might be, the brand itself is not growing that much currently, and also the models are 400 volts, not the latest technology, that sort of thing. It's not the NT 3.0 platform, right? So that's the bearish stance on the NIO brand, but the ES8 is frankly already showing what's the future there. So highlighted here in the remarks, makes sense. Now, that point where NIO talks about entering an agreement to make additional investments in NIO China was a bit of a surprise to me. I didn't know that this would happen or be part of the report. So basically, they are saying that they are now upping their stake of NIO as the holding company in which we are invested into a daughter company, which is NIO China, right? Which we hold an interest in via this agreement. And so it's now going up to 91.8%. I talked in a previous video about this new role of this NIO capital markets guy, and that I am seeing two different scenarios being prepared. One, Plan A, everything works well. We see increasing sales. We see a clear path towards profitability and possibly even a way to breaking even without needing to tap into more funds. The second plan, Plan B, in which things go not accordingly to plan, NIO is getting into trouble. They may need more capital, or they actually may need an entirely new plan, like diversifying out of some of their assets. And I've seen some of the preparations happening for that, like with all of the CATL talks, with what's happening with NIO Power, the subsidiaries in China and sort of stuff. So my first thought when I read about this additional agreement here, I thought, oh, well, that's something again around this topic of, maybe some preparations of a possible spin-out, of a possible merger, of a possible sellout, of a possible fundraise, that sort of stuff. And, something which would go into that Plan B. But the way I'm reading that right now, that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems to be just more of a NIO, owning more of NIO where in China, where also the assets are held and such. So in a sense, this is a little bit like the Hefei agreement type of situation, if you know, where once they were getting this bailout from the Hefei local government, and therefore they gave parts of NIO China to the Hefei local government, and therefore they got investment. And later on, when the share price of the ADR of the US listed stock was spiking so high, and NIO was doing considerably well, and was well funded, and they also did a round of raising cash. They used some of the cash proceeds to buy back stakes in NIO China. So not entirely sure how to read it, but I don't read it entirely like this Plan B type of scenario, that this is part of the preparations of if things turn sour. It's actually, for now, as I'm reading it, it should be a good thing for NIO shareholders, as we are owning more of NIO China versus the other investors in that entity. Maybe I talked a lot about bad stuff that I saw in the report, but maybe something that surprised me on the good side, and that is also maybe related to this here, is that the cash balance came in at 3.8 billion US. That's actually 200 million more than I personally estimated. I'll see that in a second when I go into my estimations. But yeah, so, I didn't see anything on that side. Also, what I'm waiting for still, no signal still from the NIO management side about the topic of what's in for shareholders. Maybe this could be interpreted as a positive news for shareholders owning more of that NIO China stake, which in the future, if that's generating more profits, then this will influence the ADR positively, right? So, but as I said in my previous videos, I'm still waiting on a bit of a signal from management, for example, with the primary Hong Kong Stock Exchange listing or anything else that will signal a little bit more that we will be part of the journey if NIO recovers, and this final big vision hopefully gets into focus again, and that they're not looking to kind of diversify out of some assets, that sort of stuff, and leaving some of the investors behind, right? So that's the things that what I was looking into the report going into that. So first off, on the numbers, pretty much not what I expected or was hoping for in a bit of a bullish take that I personally had. So and I don't think it's a good report, to be honest. But for the other signs, I didn't see something negative, or also not that I would totally want to highlight here, right? So I think that might be part of the earnings call that will come in 45 minutes. And other than that, in this report, I only saw mainly the normal comments and those bit of explanations. Maybe that bit was a bit interesting. Sounded also bullish, in my opinion. Starting from second quarter, our comprehensive cost reduction and efficiency improvement initiatives have started to yield results. Excluding organizational optimization charges, our non-GAAP operating loss improved by over 30% sequentially. So that's from Stanley Yuchi, NIO's Chief Financial Officer. We are now approaching a structural inflection point in our financials with positive momentum building towards a sustainable, vicious cycle and continued performance improvements. I have to be honest with you, I didn't see that much of these improvements in this report, but that's maybe on the surface. I will now go into my Excel sheet in which I found actually some improvements. So if you dig a little bit deeper, I think there are some, but I was looking to get them a little bit more obvious in a sense that, we possibly even get a beat on the top or the bottom line, something that Wall Street will consider, but that's not the case. So we need to look a little bit more deeper in here. But the fact that we get this quote from the CFO here, I think I haven't seen something like that in a previous quarters. So that's something to highlight, definitely. There's also a little bit of a guidance here, positive momentum will get improved from here. And yeah, the focus on the performance, right? So a little bit of a highlight here. Good. Let's see. I think at this point, I'll jump into my estimates and see what I have been thinking about. Let me get this where we are here. Here we go. All right. So that was shared with my Patreon community yesterday. The numbers here in the estimates section, as you can see, it's much higher than the actuals that's here in that line E. So vehicle sales, 2.7 billion. And in a second, I will also show you why I have definitely been too much outgoing here. But what I've been doing is I've taken my previous estimations for the sales that I was expecting and was cutting them down, but mainly on the NIO brand, which are the highest ASPs vehicles and also with the highest margins, right? So therefore, I came down with higher revenues still, and also with, I left much higher margins here, 16%. So you can see for vehicle margins and gross margins, I thought 16% might be possible. So this is where it's getting clear that I had a very, very bullish take here. Frankly, I knew that this would likely not gonna happen, but I thought maybe they have been sandbagging in the past and they had already lots of the improvements made in the past and maybe also lots of the bad stuff baked in the previous earning reports, and therefore may actually start surprising now, building up that momentum into a hopeful Q4 quarter, right? So in a sense, I would rather see a more gradual improvements into Q4 until we get this hopeful profitable quarter, this great quarter. But instead, what we got is still a more, more type of not a great quarter, right? Something what I'm personally not so excited about. And then in the next couple of quarters, I think the improvements they will be very large, right? So it's going to be a very huge sudden uptick in net loss reductions and that sort of stuff. And I thought it's going to be more gradual because also, if you look in the last couple of earnings reports, they always started guiding for those double-digit margins with ultimately hitting 20% or maybe in a couple of years, 25% of vehicle margins, for example. And I just thought, they can phase that in gradually, despite knowing, Q2 is still a quarter where you don't sell the most of the cars, right? Yes, we are in this phase where we are still ramping a couple of new brands and models and that sort of stuff. And so I think that's how we landed at the 10% and those lower numbers than what I was anticipating here. So instead of a gross profit of 500 million, we got 265 million, and that wasn't clearly enough to pay for the operating expenses, which I put at 400 for R&D and 500 million for SG&A. And we came actually quite close. So 419 for R&D and 553 for SG&A. So in total, the operating expenses, I estimated there would be 900, and they have been actual 972. So Actually quite close. So I'm quite happy actually with the cost side here. That could have been much worse. I actually expected, if I'm wrong on my take here with those estimations, then I'm surely going to be wrong on the cost side and we still have higher cost. But that was not the case. The problem with my estimations was that I have much higher margin anticipations and much higher revenue anticipations. And now if I go into some of the KPIs that I'm usually watching, like the average sales price, the ASPs, you can see where my call was clearly also a bit unrealistic. I thought we'd get an average sales price of 37,000, more than 37,000 USD per vehicle, whereas the actual came in at around 31,000. And that is actually, if you go into where this number coming from, so in the last couple of quarters, we had 33, 32, 32, and now it's 31, right? So it is actually quite similar to what we've had before. So you can say I clearly made a mistake there going into an estimation. So I'm happy that I didn't publish it on the public channel. Actually, just spoke with that around that on my Patreon with these estimations, because they have been clearly off here in that regard and way too bullish, way too positive, and that's unrealistic given the fact that NIO brand wasn't doing that well during that quarter as well. And but something else with, again, the bottom line really is the highlight of this report, not so much the top line, and that's interesting, because we always have been a bit more worried about the bottom line, haven't we, than the top line. At least I myself always thought like the issue is not so much the sales, because NIO is doing quite well on quarterly, annual, year-over-year growth metrics. If you compare it to some peers who are out there competing in the same segment, so above 300,000 RMB, for example, in sales price. But on a cost side, it was always an issue that they came in much, much higher. Sometimes we had SG&A 600 million more. And now the SG&A per vehicle sold, I estimated to be down to 7,000 USD, and it came actually in at 7,600, and that's huge. Let me show you this graph. Where did I put it? Here it is. Let me just quickly see if you can see it on the screen, because I'm here on a laptop setup. So yeah, you'll see that graph. Perfect. So the significance of this chart is, and I think I've highlighted that also in one of my last videos, that we need this to uncouple. And what does it mean? The blue bars are the vehicle sales going up, up, up. So now more than 70,000 per quarter. Q3 likely going to be a record quarter. And what we need to keep coming down is this orange line. So not the dotted orange line, which is a trend line, but the actual orange line. And that came down significantly. So this is huge. This is exactly what is needed for NIO to become a profitable company. We need this sort of operational leverage to kick in, which is the same or lower OPEX, like cost for operations, but at the same time scaling up and ramping up production, deliveries, and ideally revenues, okay? And that has happened in this quarter. We made a huge jump from Q1 to Q2, ramping up sales at the same time. Actually, the cost per vehicle, the SG&A cost, so that is involving sales, marketing, and some of the operational things related to that, administrative stuff, per vehicle has come down to a record low number. This is pretty amazing. This is the path to profitability. This is the highlight of my report. And this is, exactly what has possibly also influenced the CFO to go out and make this statement about this improvements that have started to take place, and he'll guiding towards the future. And that is exactly what needs to happen. Actually, in a sense, Xiaopeng and Li Auto have demonstrated that in the past that they can, cut the ratio between, those revenues and the cost related to that by maybe to a third, and less than that. And that has not been the case in many quarters for NIO. But in this quarter, despite the fact that most of these numbers are, definitely worse than my estimates, and I would say still not great. I mean, 700 mil net loss is not great. Okay, it's still burning through a lot of money. But at the same time, we see what's going on with NIO right now, with all of these numbers picking up in sales with the L90 and the ES8 possibly, and the spillover effects it's having on the other models like the L60, on the NIO brand hopefully as well. And then Firefly hopefully getting out of the woods as well, a new factory coming online. That's the way it could work. Now for guidance, they guided between 87 and 91,000. And yeah, if my numbers are correct here, just quickly calculated that July and August have been 21 and 31. So September going to be around 34 to 38,000. So that's the guidance that we're getting here, to be honest. If I look at my latest full year estimates, I was thinking Q3. So first of all, I thought Q2 would be higher. That's the 6,000 cars that I cut out of my estimates. But for Q3, I also was looking at 92,000 in total. And yeah, looks like NIO's not guiding that high. Let's see. My Q4 estimates are quite low compared to what I see else out there. I'll stick with that for now. The 337,000 or 338,000 for the full year, until I see something needs to change. So yeah, that's a little bit about my own estimates and how it's different, and some highlights of this report, really the SG&A per vehicle, and where my estimates have been clearly off of the average sales price. I don't think we need to aim at higher average sales prices in the future. Maybe I was hoping also a little bit about the hopeful impact of the ET9, very high ASP on that vehicle, but yeah, clearly not going to happen like that. And now the NIO brand becoming less and less important for now. So half an hour into this live stream, I talked about the market takeaway, the general report, and how I thought it's not actually a super exciting report, unfortunately. How my estimations were too bullish, definitely, but also that there are some really positives and highlights into the right direction in there. Still, the main thing that I would be looking for would be something from the management, like some sort of a sign to investors. That's something that I would like to see. That's what I'm talking about on our channel. But maybe now time to dive into some of the questions here in the question comments section. Maybe I'll quickly open the report again. That part, because definitely I haven't talked through all of that, but if I missed something, let me know in the comment section, or any questions you have or any remarks on what I just said. So where are we now going forward, looking forward? So I possibly thought, okay, this might be already a bit more of a surprise breakout quarter, but these hopes have been too optimistic and bullish. I thought that might happen, that I'm becoming too bullish here at that point. So it's all gonna squeeze into the end of the year, Q3 and Q4. That's the reality. That's how it is. But yeah, the cost side, really, in conjunction with the latest development on the revenues and car launches and this new management approach with Shen Fei and that sort of stuff, lets me think that we are currently really more on that plan A camp. If I'm coming back to my videos, what I'm saying, like, it's looking realistic that probable, maybe not saying realistic, but probable that NIO is on the path to profitability with that for a quarter in Q4. I think it's realistic. I think it's possible. But there are not enough signs for me yet in this report, okay? So it is what it is. Don't get too excited about that. Personally, I have to say my feeling for this report was not that I'm excited, not that I think that's a great report, but I'm fairly relaxed about where we are right now. Speaking of being relaxed, what's the probabilities of plan B? NIO is getting into trouble. It doesn't work out. This new NIO Capital guy is divesting some of NIO's assets, raising funds, share price tanks. It could happen. I think there's still a significant amount of shares short NIO stock. Last time I looked was 200 million. So definitely it's getting more and more expensive right now for them to cover. But I wouldn't rule out that after such report right now, we get also a bit of a dip in NIO stock price. This morning, it's been very, very, very volatile, right? Right now it's green. Who knows where it's ending today. But on the other hand, the bull case is clear. From here, it's only getting better, right? Q3 may not be as good as I personally estimate. But Q4 might be better than what I'm conservatively assuming here. In my last couple of sessions, I've been very, very conservative. And now I thought, time to go out. Now show the investors where we're headed. Still quite subtle in here. So we'll hear in the earnings call where they want to take it from here. Will they be super outgoing and bullish and telling us how confident they are, and the CFO talking about all of these incremental improvements on the cash flow side, on the cost side and stuff, or will they putting a little bit weight on the brakes still? That will be interesting to hear. And maybe somebody from NIO speaks up and talks to us as shareholders. Should we read this new bigger stake in NIO China as a positive sign? What else? What other bullish measures are you taking? What relief do you give us to know plan B is not going to happening? Or if it's plan B, we will still hopefully be part of that journey somehow, and not that you are going to sell out the business in a way that really hurts us as retail investors. That shouldn't be the case. So that's where we are right now. So far, my ideas around this report. I'll dive into the Q&A in a second. Management call in half an hour. Everybody who's now tuned in, this will be available as a recording. Again, if you're subscribed for 1 year, you will be able to ask questions in here. If you are also a YouTube membership subscriber, so you can become a member of my YouTube channel, then you also get additional videos that also being posted in the Patreon community. So the Patreon is currently still not open for new users, but you can support this channel if you like. Either, of course, always like smashing likes or sharing the videos, that would be great, but also becoming just a member and getting some additional content. Anyways, these are the people who can ask questions now, and now I'm gonna go into some of yours and see what's in here. I saw people talking about the huge pre-market. I think somebody mentioned 18% down in the beginning. Yeah, I actually didn't see that. Down 18%, then up again. Now we're green, I think. So it's quite fluctuating today, and also very big volume in the beginning. Yesterday I shared with my patrons that I think actually 7 USD was actually kind of my target price for this current wave that we're in, and it's sort of a resistance. We need a good report to possibly break higher than that, or investors getting already very bullish about Q3. If that's happening, then we could really go quickly to 9 USD or even higher, up to 13 USD, I think, if shorts need to cover. But I wouldn't rule out that they actually drop it 20% from here. With, there's lots of bearish stuff in this report. If you want to talk about 700 million continued losses and that sort of stuff, you can do that, right? You can still spin this into a going concern stuff. I think they mentioned a going concern note in this report, something that's also, really frustrating or making retail investors unsecure. Oftentimes I get this question about, our cash basically helps us to get through the next 12 months. I think they are legally bound to state something like this in the report. As I said, that the 3.8 billion was rather a little bit of a relief on my side here. I thought that they would have more cash burn this quarter. So I'm not getting too much anxiety from that report regarding that side. But could still go south, right? So and Chinese stocks had really had a quite good run recently. But now maybe with the Alibaba earnings going through and Xiaopeng was quite positive, right? Maybe we see also a little bit of a rally continuing in Chinese names overall. I remember times where we all been talking about China at bazooka and stuff. Where's the China stimulus? It still hasn't happened. Still, the HSI doing well, Chinese A market is doing well. So overall, Chinese stocks are doing well. But that's also why I'm saying, hey, NIO, where's the primary listing? So mainland Chinese can also get exposure to NIO stock. And why I'm saying they should do it is also because it would send a signal that, hey, we're making our whole governance here more complex. It's a process to take up this listing, which involves management fees or consulting fees and lawyer fees and really maybe even restructuring the user trust and that sort of stuff in order to get that to that primary listing. That's not something that you do if you are thinking the company is going under, or you want a bailout, or you want to raise cash, or you want to merge your assets into something else, right? So that's why I'm looking for this type of a signal. And the benefit would be, NIO would benefit more of this sort of a bull market right now, or the hype that we see in Chinese stocks. All right, what else? Let's see if there are some interesting questions in there. If not, later on, I'll cut this call and jump onto the next one, which you'll see in your timeline when you are subscribed to this channel, and in which I will be, live streaming the management call, plus additionally also will be adding my thoughts as usual. Yeah, I don't see too many questions, more like comments from you guys. Interesting. Oh yeah, good point here. The other sales growth, totally forgot to talk about that, because this is actually better than what I personally estimated. So the other sales came in at 400 million, and by the way, they are profitable, right? So where do we go here? The other sales, scroll. Other sales came in 400 mil, and the cost of the other sales has been 368 million, meaning other sales, and that's stuff like battery swapping, but obviously also the new life and that sort of e-commerce, that sort of revenues, services revenues, has been a profitable business. That's amazing. That's really amazing. I was thinking only that they would be below 400 mil, and I'm not sure if let me quickly look. Yeah, I did expect them to be slightly profitable on the other sales as well, but that's great stuff against all of those short narratives around that battery swapping is only unprofitable, and NIO is wasting too much efforts and time on all of these external ventures and other business ideas. The reason why I always invested in NIO and being so passionate and interested in this company was actually that they do those other services and that they are much more than just a car company, right? Because everything else would be boring or would be just like Tesla. But no, NIO is very interesting in the NIO Life approach, in the battery as a service management, potential energy grid balancing, that sort of businesses, and all of that is in the service businesses. And to see that breaking even is great, really, really great. So thanks, Yasin. That's a great comment. Something that I forgot talking about. So yeah, if I summarize it again, I would say 2 really nice highlights in this report. Let's start with the nice stuff, 2 highlights. The SG&A per vehicle sold are actually great. This is the exact route and signal we want to see towards profitability. If that continues, then we are out of the woods. That's really, really great. Remarkable efforts, despite the fact that we haven't seen yet a full reduction in cost, but that may actually come in the next quarters. But that has been a really, really great highlight of this report, in my opinion. And the second one, the other sales services business breaking even. The downside, if you look just like me briefly at the report, you see the revenues aren't that great. You see the average sales prices are down, margins are down. You see still 700 millions in net losses, and that things are totally not great. But I would say that's pretty much what Mr. Market expected. And now the question is how they rate the future and how certain is the future and where things are headed, right? So that's where the management call comes in. So yeah, that's what I'm going to cover in the next video. So thanks for watching this video or the recording if you're tuning in later. And now I'm going to prepare the management call. See you in 15 minutes in my next video, where I'll be live streaming the management call and give you all my thoughts around that. And possibly we may have some more Q&A coming up. Yeah, maybe I'll be early a little bit in the next stream. So see you, and I'll post it on X. And if you haven't seen it on X, you can see it in your YouTube timeline or also definitely in the Patreon community. Okay, so see you in a bit. Thanks for watching.